Oh yeah, let's add a custom mob to Minecraft. New topics added to the Forge and Fabric courses such as tameable and rideable entities, projectiles, throwable projectiles, and boats, as well as first steps to biomes and dimensions. Courses linked in the description below. Alright, we find ourselves back in Intelligence more, and in this tutorial we're going to be adding a custom mob to Minecraft, and this is going to be including custom animations. So let's take a look at the mob over here. So this is of course going to be our cute little porcupine right here. And the porcupine, it's going to be vanilla only, so no need for Geckolib. If you want to make your own custom entity, of course you will need Blockbench. I do have a guide on Blockbench. I think it is for Geckolib, but the same idea applies basically. You want to create a custom mob right here, a custom entity, and what's very important is you want two plugins, and those plugins are going to be the following. It's the animated Java plugin as well as the animation to Java converter, and I believe for Fabric you should also get the Fabric modded entity, and with all three of those then you should be good to go. And what you then have is you have an animate tab. And you can see that we have a walking animation. Now the walking, like the animations, I made those myself. They are not, listen, okay? They are workable, right? They look fine, they're okay, but they're not the best. The model was done by someone else. And then we have an attack animation, which is this. I actually think this is really cool, right? So it like sort of extends and then, you know, the quills just like, you know, extend. It's pretty cool. There's also a sitting animation, which we're not actually going to use, but it is there and available. And of course, the Blockbench file, as well as all of the other files and the code and everything, linked in the description below, available to you for download. Now, when we have a Blockbench file, what can we do with it? Well, we need to export quite a few things, namely 3 of them. So we want to go to File, Export, and then Export Java Entity. If this does not appear, then you want to make sure that your project, right, under the convert project basically, that the current format is modded entity. That's quite important. So do keep that in mind. For the Blockbench files that I will provide, that should be the case. So we want to export the Java entity. This is going to export a Java file. So we're just going to do that, exporting the porcupine model right here. We then want to go to File, Export again to export animations to Java. In this case, we want to select the yarn mappings, very important for Fabric, of course. I'm just going to call them the porcupine anim over here and save that as well. And then lastly, on the texture, we want to right-click, save as, and porcupine PNG is exactly right. So there you go. So those are going to be the 3 things that we're going to need to export from Blockbench. And now we can proceed back to IntelliJ and actually coding the entity. So entities they're interesting. Let's just say that. So let's start in the tutorial mod package, and we're going to right click and make a new package called entity. Inside of there, we'll need a couple of other packages. Number 1 is going to be the client one. Then we need another package in the entity package. That's going to be the custom. I just like to put that basically all of the custom entities in there. And then the last one is going to be the animation package. There you go. So we can start by actually adding a class in the entity package itself. So there's going to be the mod entities. This is where we will actually register all of our entities. And there's a couple more things that we're going to need. Let's just create all of the different classes that we need in the custom package. We want the porcupine entity. There you go. Then in the client one, we can create the porcupine renderer. And in the animation, in the client, we can also create the model layers. And then in the animation, we can create the mod animations. There you go. And I believe that should be all of them. What we can then do is we can take the porcupine model Java file that we have exported from Blockbench, and we can actually insert it or, you know, add it to our client package. You will be met with this mess, which once again, first of all, calm down. There's a lot of red, but it is not as bad as it might seem, because you can see right here, the class name does not match the name of the file, which of course we have to fix immediately. So this is going to be porcupine model, and you can see, you know, things start getting way better. Similar thing here, porcupine model. This is just going to be the constructor. We can delete the model layer right here, and then basically the only thing we want to do now, all of the red marked words, we just want to import. So you click on this and press Alt and Enter, and be sure to import the correct class over here, net Minecraft entity model, import that as well. And then you basically just go through each of the different classes over here. So you can see that the layer definition right here is not actually available. Now, why would this be the case? This is the case because for some reason, even though it detected that this is a Fabric model, it did not properly do it, because you can see that the export version, it's very strange why it does that. But basically, you want to go to File, Project, and you want to make sure under the export version, you select Fabric 117 plus, confirm. And now we need to re-export the Java entity because Otherwise, it's going to use the wrong mappings for some reason. So what we can do is we can just delete the Porcupine model again, re-import it, and then we should actually be able to see that this is, so there you go, look at this. We even have the correct name over here, and now we have all of those different parts. I suggest what you do is you just delete them. You just basically delete all of them except for the Porcupine itself, because they are just not necessary. And now we do the same spiel, basically just importing the correct classes over here. And now look at this. This one is available, and now this one is available, and now all of them are available just like we would expect. And there's another one over here. Node dilation is also in there, so that is totally fine. Entity model, also import that. And then at the very bottom, you can see there's a lot of things going on, right? Basically, the model part data, right? These are all of the individual pieces of the model that are basically represented as code in this case. And there we go. If we import the set angles and the render method over here, then everything is fine and no more errors should be present. But we're not quite done just yet, because we actually wanted to change just a couple of things. And that is that the actual Porcupine model right here should actually first of all be of a type T extends Porcupine entity. And then the entity model should not be an entity model, but what it actually should be is a single part entity model of type T. The reason why we're doing this is so that it's easier for us to do the animations. We're going to fix the error in just a second. We also just want another private final model part right here. And that's going to be the head. And the head we're going to do the following way. We're going to say Porcupine dot get child. We're going to get the body. Then we're going to get the child of that, which is going to be dot get child torso. And then we're going to get the child of that, which is going to be called head. There we go. Now you might ask yourself, how do you know that that is the way to the head? Well, if we go back to Blockbench for a second, you can see Porcupine is the root. Then we have the body. Then we have the child torso, and then here we have the child somewhere right here, the head. And if I were to, for example, rotate the head around, you can see that is exactly the head. Oh, that was a neck-breaking speed over here. We don't want that, but yeah, you can see that is basically the head, how you can basically find the specific model part like that. And to fix the error right here, we basically just want to go down all the way here. Instead of an entity, this could be now a Porcupine entity, and all of a sudden everything is saved, and that should be at that. Which one is the issue? Oh, the get part, of course. So here we have the get part. This is the root part. Basically, you just want to return the Porcupine that we already have, and that is basically everything that we are going to need here. Of course, all of the code is available to you as well, so no worries at all. The reason for this error is going to be fixed in a moment, because right now the Porcupine entity, you know, it's an empty class, so it doesn't do anything. Once that is changed, then this error also goes away, and there you go. So no worries at all. And that is actually, for now, everything we need to do in the model class. In a bit, we also need to set up the animations there. But let's first of all continue to go to the actual entity itself. So that's going to be the Porcupine entity. This will extend the animal entity class, and we shall hover over this, implement the create a child method, hover over this again, create constructor matching super. And there we go, making sure that this is going to be set to public here, the constructor, very important. And there we have it. Now, when it comes to entities, they can be, well, I mean, quite complicated, and there's a lot of them. But what you have at your disposal is basically all of the different classes from vanilla. So if you go into the animal entity class, for example, you can middle mouse button click, and you can go in here. If you have the blue line right here, what you can do is, if you haven't done this already, you can open the terminal./Gradle W gen sources, and you just let that run through. And once that is done, we can actually get the proper like sources for Minecraft. It's always highly recommended to do this. I believe, also show this in the first tutorial, but you know, sometimes people forget about that or something like that. But you know, let's just let this run through, and then we can actually see the proper one instead of looking at decompiled stuff. All right, so we are done here, build successful in about 2 minutes. And what we can now do is we can choose the sources, and we have this -sources jar right here. If we say okay, all of a sudden we now have the proper sources. There are only tiny differences. Usually they aren't great, but it's still better to have that, because now we can basically just go through all of the different entities, and you see mob entity, and I keep just middle mouse button clicking on this, and you can see it is a crazy tree until we reach entity right here. And once we reach that, we can press Control H. And now we can see and expand every single entity class that exists in vanilla. And I cannot recommend enough to basically just be like, I want an entity that basically kind of works like a ghast. Bam. You go into the ghast, you take a look at it. You're like, oh, something doesn't add up here. Well, you go to the flying entity. Maybe there's something in there that's interesting. Like, I just cannot recommend enough to basically just take a look at all of the different classes that are available, all of the different entities if you have a specific entity that you want to make, they are probably the best resource that you can have. Of course, this means you need some Java knowledge to understand everything that's happening, but that is just how it's going to be. I mean, I'm going to just keep saying that it is what it is. Now, with this done, the create child method is going to get a deliberate error right here because for now, I just want to get the two most important things in here, and that is going to be, number one, the attributes as well as the goals. So we're going to make an entity without any animations for now. We're just going to add it. It's going to be fine. It's going to be like it's going to work. And then we're going to, after that, add the animations as well. So this is going to be two things, the goals as well as the attributes. Let's do the attributes first. This is going to be a public static default attribute container data builder. This is going to be the create porcupine attributes. And this is going to return mob entity dot create mob attributes, and then we just add different attributes. So for example, entity attributes dot for example, max health, right? We want some max health over here. Maybe 25 is a little bit much, maybe 15 is a little bit better. And then we can add another one. So entity attributes dot, for example, the movement speed. Where is the movement speed? Right here. So movement speed is 0.2, for example. There you go. And then we can add another one, entity attributes dot maybe armor, maybe just armor or something like that, right? Maybe add a, I don't know, 0.5 or something like that, something. And then we can also add attack damage, entity attributes dot attack damage. There you go. And the attack damage may be a 2 here as well. There you go. So as you can see, the attributes basically, you know, its health, its movement speed, things like that, they are quite important to, well, basically to have. Otherwise, you will run into some issues, and we need to also register those. Now, you need to register those. We can't do that just yet because we first need to register the entity, but, you know, one step at a time, because the other thing that's quite important are goals. For this, you want to override the init goals method right here. And what we wanted to do is we basically wanted to add goals to a goal selector. So we can say this dot goal selector dot add. Then we have a priority. So priority, the lower the priority, right? So 0 would get executed before 1, before 2, and so on and so forth. So the lower the priority, quote unquote, the sooner it gets executed, basically. And basically the number one priority that you always have is going to be the swim goal, because otherwise your mob, if it is in water, it's just going to sink and and it's going to drown. So that's usually not something you want. So I highly recommend to basically always put the swim goal at the very top over here with priority 0, and then we can basically proceed. So we can add a couple of other priorities and goals right here. So those are going to be, for example, the new animal mate goal. So this is going to basically have when given the proper food, they're going to mate over here. And then we have another goal, for example, maybe a priority 3, a tempt goal. This is going to be this, and maybe a 0.25 increase. And then we have an ingredient of what exactly of items. Maybe it's going to be, items dot, I don't know what they eat, beetroot, something like that. Maybe something, yeah, beetroot, why not? And then this is going to be false. They cannot be scared. And you can see that there are a lot of goals and a lot of different things that you can do. Once again, with the same idea, you can middle mouse button click on a goal, and you can then click on the goal, Control H, and you have every single every single goal available in vanilla over here that you can take a look at, right? The calm down goal, shoot fireball goal from the blaze. We have a move goal from the slime. There are so many different goals, as you can see, so many different examples. If you're like, oh, I really want to have a custom entity with like a custom AI, you have it all there. It's impossible to show every single type of idea or something that you want, so I cannot recommend enough. Go through the goal class, take a look at how it works, take a look at some examples, and that is the best way that you can basically do this and implement the entity of your dreams, so to speak. I'm just going to implement a few more goals over here. We're going to have the follow parent goal. This is going to be fine, yep. And then we have a couple of more just random ones. This is going to be the wander around far goal. That's going to be fine, but it's going to be a normal speed here, 1D, and then maybe 2 more, and that's going to be 5 and 6. This is going to be the look at entity goal, which is going to have another second parameter, which is actually the player. So basically, you can select which, and that is going to be 4D, 4F actually, or a range. So you can actually see, you can actually select which type of entity this should look at, which I find really cool actually. And then there's also the look around goal, which is just going to make the entity look around a little bit more. And there you go. So those are some example goals over here. Once again, you can try this out, take a look at what goals are available, try to, use them, and you should be able to see and really customize your own custom entity there. But those are basically the two big things, and now we can actually register the entity in the mod entities class. Now for this, it's actually as simple as saying public static final entity type of type porcupine entity. This is the porcupine equal to registry, making sure we choose net Minecraft registry. Extremely important. .register registries dot entity type and then a new identifier of tutorial mod.modid for porcupine fabric entity type builder dot create with a spawn group of creature and then porcupine entity : new after the first closing parentheses dot dimensions, and this is going to be entity dimensions dot fixed, and we're going to do a 1 and a 1. It's going to have a hitbox of basically 1 block by 1 block, and then after the second closing parentheses dot build and ending it all with a semicolon, and there you go. That is everything we need, and now we can actually also fix a few issues. So the child over here, mod entities dot porcupine dot create, passing in the world, and there we go. Now we have a baby porcupine here as well. Awesome. And of course, vital are the attributes. Very important here. You can see that they are grayed out, which means they are not used. That means we want to go to the tutorial mod class and call the fabric default attribute registry.register mod entities.porcupine, and then we can say porcupine entity.create porcupine attributes, and bam, there we go. We have our custom attributes also registered, and now the entity should be basically almost good to go. Right, so we still have the renderer as well as the mod model layers. Let's do the mod model layers first because that is a little bit easier. So this is going to be the public static final entity model layer called porcupine equal to a new entity model layer with a new identifier tutorial mod.modid, and this is the porcupine. And after the first closing parenthesis, we then have another string called main, and then no more errors should basically be present. And this has to be connected with the model. So this happens in the tutorial mod client class. So this is going to be the entity model layer registry.register model layers, mod model layers.porcupine, and then you get the porcupine model get textured model data. So what does this really do? Well, basically, it just says, okay, whatever the data in here is, the textured model data, this is going to be our model represented in code, right? That is going to be registered more or less under the model layer of the porcupine. That's pretty much all we're doing. And now onto the renderer, which is actually one of the more easier classes. The only thing that's crazy is the extension over here. This extends mob entity renderer of type porcupine entity of type porcupine model of type porcupine entity. So that is absolutely ridiculous, but we're going to implement the get texture method. We will then create constructor matching super, and here only a few things need to be changed. Firstly, in the constructor, you want to delete the last two parameters. You only want to have the context right here, and then say new porcupine model entity context dot get part model layers dot porcupine. After the second closing parenthesis, we then have a this f is the size of the shadow that the entity casts. 0.6 is going to be fine. You can, of course, also change that however you see fit. We're going to have a private static final identifier called texture. This is the texture of the entity. This is a new identifier to tutorial mod.modid texture / entity / porcupine.png. And we can actually also add this. This texture, of course, has been exported a couple of minutes ago from Blockbench. So we're just going to take that and we're going to add it here in the entity folder. And there we freaking go. So now we have the porcupine PNG over here as well. And we can basically just return that in the get texture method. And then there's another thing that we can do, and that is override the render method right here. And that one actually allows us to do some pretty funny things. So for example, we can say if the mob entity is a baby, then what I want to say is I want to say matrix stack dot scale, and maybe I want to make this like half the size that it usually is. There you go. And if it's else, then I'm just going to copy this over, and then it's going to be not 15 times the size, because that would be very, very big. I don't think that that's a good idea, but maybe 1 times the size. So there you go. So this basically will also scale down the baby by basically half. Make sure that all of the XYZ coordinates are the same, like the scaling works in all the same directions, because otherwise it's going to look very strange. And now lastly, we just need to connect the renderer to our actual entity. That is once again done in the tutorial mod client class. So here we're just going to say entity renderer registry.register mod entities.porcupine, and then porcupine renderer : new. No errors should be present. And we now have a custom entity. It's not going to have any animations, but what you already would be able to do is you would already be able to lower it with beetroot, and it could mate, but right now it would mate with, I believe, wheat. I believe that's the default item, but we can override that by saying is breeding item. And let's just say, for example, stack.is of items.beetroot. If we right click two of them with beetroot, then they're going to mate and they're going to have a little tiny porcupine baby. So with this first pass through, let's go into the game and see if it works. Alright, finds us back in Minecraft, and let's just see and summon our porcupine right here, and there we freaking go. We got a porcupine. Now, of course, as you can clearly see, it has no animations. It's it's very, very interesting, but what we can do is we can get ourselves some beetroot, and look at this. Now they're following me, and I can right click them, and we're gonna get a tiny little porcupine baby right there. Look at him. Look at him go. Let's go. That's awesome. So that is going to be basically the first step for porcupines, right? And now let's add not only the animations, but a couple of other things as well. And the couple of other things, I mean, of course, sounds, because that is a question I get very often, actually. And, you know, sometimes it does amaze me, because the literally only thing that you need to do is, well, if you go through some of the actual other classes, you should be able to find this. But if you just type in sound inside of your custom entity, you can see you can override the hertz, the depth sound, hertz sound, ambient sound, all of that you can override. You can see how many different methods there are to override. So let's just override the ambient sound right here. Let's also override the hertz sound, so the get hertz sound and the get depth sound here as well. And let's just do some crazy stuff. So how about for the ambient sound, we're going to do sound events dot, maybe the Fox ambient. I feel like that makes a lot of sense. The hertz sound, we're going to do sound events dot, let's do the entity underscore cat underscore hurt. Why not? We could also do hiss, but that would be kind of funny, but let's just do that. And then the sound events here is going to be the dolphin depth sound, because I don't know why, but I really like to just use one of the dolphin sounds every time. So there you go. And of course, you can use your own custom sound events as long as they're registered properly. Then you can also add those right here in the ambient, hurt, or depth sounds as well. That's basically how easy it is to do sounds. But now it goes on to animations, and animations are a little more complicated, but you know, overall they're not too bad. What I highly recommend you do for the animations as a reference, I mean, of course, you can look at the code I'm writing over here, but you can also take a look at the camel. So this would be the camel entity, if I recall correctly. There you go. So the camel entity, so you can see that it has some animation states, and basically, and it has some other things like the update animations method and the update limbs method and stuff like that. So there's a few things that are quite interesting. Now, the first thing we can actually do is literally just copy over the update limbs method, because that is exactly the thing that we're going to need. So let me just actually go to the very top over here. Yeah, let's do it at the very top over here. Why not? So we don't have a dashing animation. That's fine. But we do have an entity pose over here, so we can actually just literally copy this, and that is going to be already pretty nice and pretty fine. Now, we are going to need some animation states and a animation timeout. That is going to be a public final animation state called idle animation state equal to a new animation state. There we go. We're also going to have a private int called idle animation timeout equal to 0 right here. And then we will need two methods, actually. Number one is we need to override the tick method. So that's going to be the tick method. And here we want to say if this.getWorld.isClient, then we want to do something. And the thing we want to do is a custom method. And that is the private void setup animation states. There you go. In the camel entity, that method is actually called update animations. Either one works fine, right? I mean, the name of this method doesn't really matter. It only matters that we call it right here, setup animation states. There we go. And then what happens in here? Well, funnily enough, literally what you could do is you could just copy over these lines over here, right? Bam, bam, and that's it. Now we just need to change this. This is going to be the idle animation timeout. There you go. So it's not called cooldown, but timeout here. And that is not the idling animation state. I called it the idle animation state. But as you can see, apart from the names here, this is exactly the same. Because in this case, I just basically took it from the entity of the camel, because it's the easiest way to, well, use it. There's a very apt example, and that is basically the idle animation. Now, it still doesn't know what animations to play and what to do and stuff like that. For this, we of course need to populate the mod animations right here. And how do we do that? Well, we have the text file that we've exported like half an hour ago. And what you can literally just do is copy all of this over and then just paste it in here. And you just need to then import all of the different classes again. And once you've done that, you can basically see, and I need to go to the animation here as well. There you go. No more errors should be present. And we now have all of our animations sort of also imported into our code. And the animations are set up in the model file. So we can go to the model file over here, the Porcupine model, and we can go down, and in the setup angles, this is where this all happens. Now, this is extremely important. The first thing in the set angles method that you want to call is always this .get part .traverse dot for each model part : reset transform. Do not forget calling this. If you don't call this, then every time your animation plays, it's going to get added onto each other until, you know, ridiculous things happen. You have to call this at the very beginning. Don't forget it. We'll also have a little bit of a helper method right here. That's going to be the set head angles method. And this is going to take in a float head yaw and a float head pitch. And there we go. And I'm just going to copy the contents of this. This is once again actually pretty much taken from the camel, just so that the head rotates properly. So this is going to be called here head angles, net head yaw, net, and then the head pitch right here. And that's it. This is going to rotate the head when it looks towards the player, as well as when it just looks around randomly. So that is for what the head angles is for. And now the animation. The first one is the animate movement. This is going to be mod animations.porcupine walk, a limb swing, the limb swing amount, then a 2 for the scale, and a 2.5 here for the distance. I just once again stole those numbers from the camel. You can, of course, change those numbers as well and see what happens. And then the other one is the update animations, where you actually want to say entity.idle animation state, mod animations.porcupine idle, then agent ticks, and then a 1 here for the speed multiplier. And you can basically see we have now sort of fused the idle animation state from the entity with the actual animation from our mod animations. And now it knows to basically play that animation when the idle animation state is called for start, right? So you can see that the idle animation state.start happens here. And if that happens, then what is being basically displayed is the porcupine idle animation. Funnily enough, that is actually everything that we need to do. So now the animations should be in game and everything should be set up, but we're not quite done just yet, because just for the sake of argument, I also want to add a spawn egg, because you know, we want to be complete over here, okay? That's just going to be a good thing to do. So this is going to be a public static final item right here. I'm going to call it the porcupine _spawn _egg equal to register item porcupine _spawn _egg. And this is a new spawn egg item, mod entities.porcupine. And then the colors, I don't think the colors actually quite match, but I'm just going to take the ones that I have already basically created over here, because why not? And then after this one is a new fabric settings, and there you go. Now we of course still need to do a very important thing, and that is actually add that to the data gen, because the porcupine item has a specific item model that we want to do. I'm just going to copy it over because it's going to be the same thing for every one of your spawn eggs, because you basically want to have a new model of item/template spawn egg. That is the way that the colors are basically going to be generated. And then let's just run the data gen right here. And then while that happens, I can also add the translation for the spawn egg. That is once again one of those things that's not too important, but you know, it's like, you know, while we're at it, why not also add that as well? Apparently 14 things were written. I don't even know which ones, but it should be fine. It should be okay. And just to close this up, we can also then add the porcupine spawn egg to the item group, and now we can go into the game and actually look at the beautiful animations of our custom entity. So let's take a look. And here we are in the game, and look at this. Look at this. Look at him. Look at him go. So this is absolutely amazing, and this already breathes so much more life into them when, you know, they turn their head and they walk around a little bit, and there's just a tiny bit of movement over here. Now the animations, I will admit, they, you know, I made those myself. They are not the greatest. They're not the best, but they do work, and they are, well, animations. So that is really freaking awesome. And you can also hear the sounds, right? So that's the cat hurt sound and all of that. So everything working. We got a custom mob with custom animations without any type of API, right? All done in vanilla. Absolutely freaking fantastic. And next time in this video, we'll continue with our porcupine by adding a custom attack animation. Hope to see you there. So, yeah.